Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, air, restoration, and flood services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit BillHowe.com. And by the Conrad Trebas Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
A top official in the Trump administration's crackdown on immigration visited San Diego today. Thanks for joining us. I'm John Carroll in for Maya Trabulsi. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem talked about drug seizures. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen says the visit comes as funding for her department is set to expire.
Thank you for being here. I'm Kristi Noem, the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security.
Noem spoke to reporters at the Otay Mesa port of entry in front of evidence boxes she said were full of drugs seized at the border. She spoke over sirens turned on in an apparent effort to drown out protesters chanting just outside the facility. Noem praised the officers who catch the drugs, mostly at legal border crossings.
Now, the men and women here at Otay Mesa are heroes who work around the clock to make sure that they're keeping Americans safe. Fentanyl has killed countless Americans who still should be here with us today. In fact, I've met with many parents who've lost children to fentanyl poisoning.
Fentanyl deaths in the U.S. began to drop under President Biden in 2023. Experts point to the growing availability of Narcan, which can reverse overdoses. One recent study suggested a crackdown in China could also be disrupting the global supply of the narcotic. When asked about the protesters, Noem shrugged.
Well, they're obviously expressing their First Amendment rights, and we welcome that. As long as they do so peacefully, I think it's a wonderful thing.
Noem's visit coincided with the drawdown of federal agents from Minneapolis following the killings of Alex Preddy and Renee Good. Democrats in Congress are demanding limits to ICE and CBP officer conduct in exchange for funding Noem's department. If no deal is reached, many DHS employees will be working without pay starting on Saturday. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
As Andrew just mentioned, the intensified ICE operation in Minneapolis is ending. Border Czar Tom Homan announcing today the drawdown of immigration officers in Minnesota is underway. Brian Abel reports.
I have proposed, and President Trump has concurred, that this surge operation conclude.
The federal immigration crackdown in Minnesota coming to an end, as U.S. Border Czar Tom Homan announces agents are leaving the state.
A significant drawdown has already been underway this week.
The aggressive surge that began in December, called the largest immigration operation ever by DHS, was met with fierce criticism and resistance by Minnesotans almost instantaneously, with clashes between protesters and agents in Minneapolis and residents becoming observers, filming immigration enforcement actions in real time, leading to the first major flashpoint: the killing of Renee Good by an ICE agent. Her death sparking, at times, violent confrontations between protesters and federal agents. Tensions exacerbated by a second U.S. civilian killed in Minneapolis by a federal agent, Alex Preddy. The deaths upping pressure on the White House to end the operation as protesters mobilized and Democratic lawmakers threatened to withhold DHS funding unless ICE reforms happen. The Minnesota AG saying this about the crackdown to senators on Capitol Hill the day Homan announced the end of the enforcement operation.
The surge is contributing to violent crime, members. It's contributing to violent crime. 2 of the 3 homicides committed in Minneapolis in 2026 have come at the hands of federal immigration agents.
In Washington, Brian Abel, KPBS News.
County leaders are trying to get a look inside the Otay Mesa detention facility amid rising concerns about living conditions for detainees. In a Facebook post, County Chair Tara Lawson-Remer says the county has begun the process for a public health inspection. She adds the county aims to, quote, document the reality inside. This comes after Congressman Juan Vargas was denied an oversight visit last week. He says his office received complaints that detainees were being held without fresh food and were constantly getting sick.
I don't know if the conditions that they're holding people in there are standard or substandard. I don't know that.
Core Civic, which runs the facility, sent a statement to our media partner, KGTV. It reads in part, "The safety, health, and well-being of the individuals in their care is their top priority, and that claims of any food quality issues at the facility are false. The inspection still has to be coordinated."
Well, we have a storm system passing just to our south and east that will clip a few mountainous areas on Friday with a little moisture in the short term, though mainly a quiet night for us. And you can see that shield of moisture here into early Friday, mainly into the desert southwest. What really gets our attention, though, is the storm system for next week, the storm track that'll become much more active as we get into the work week here Monday night. Rain returns. It'll still be with us off and on even later in the week. Details ahead.
The latest San Diego County data show flu continues to surge here. More than 2,400 cases were reported last week. That number had grown by nearly 500 cases from the week before. That's due in part to the type of flu strain that's circulating. Dr. Anusha Vyas is a pulmonologist at Sharp Healthcare. She says while influenza A is still present, influenza B is becoming more prominent.
It is thought to be slightly more contagious than our regular influenza strains, especially the subclade K. The proper precautions still work, so wearing the mask, washing your hands are still very effective.
She says the hospital is seeing more patients as flu spreads across the region. She says while this year's flu vaccine is not as effective as in past seasons, it still plays an important role in reducing illness. Defense contractors were in San Diego this week to hear from the Navy and Marine Corps about how they plan to invest record defense budgets in the coming years. KPBS military reporter Andrew Dyer says the message from the military at the annual West Conference was simple. We've got the money and we're looking to spend it.
Emerging technology is always a hot topic at the conference. This year, the promise of more defense spending, fewer guardrails, and an administration all in on artificial intelligence has ignited a feeding frenzy among private sector companies looking for a piece of the action. But over and over again, experts talked in broad generalities about the technology, especially its speed in processing data. Like Stuart Wagner, the Navy's chief AI officer.
That is superhuman speed, in my opinion. How that impacts warfare is not yet knowable. We can guess, but it's not knowable.
Over 3 days, the conference hosted more than 36 panels, either explicitly about AI or that included an AI expert. At one panel on AI Wednesday, former Joint Chiefs Vice Chairman Admiral Christopher Grady talked about the problem of a top-down approach to AI implementation.
Now we have to teach our operators and our officer corps and the rest on how we use the data, right down to what's the right way to write a prompt.
What was made clear throughout the conference is the Pentagon is ready to spend. In December, it rolled out its own generative AI platform, GenAI.mil. Last month, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth unveiled his AI acceleration strategy for the department, a plan to fast-track contracts without normal safeguards. Justin Finelli, the Navy's chief technology officer, told an audience of defense contractors at the conference that they need to come with data to get in on the wave.
If we can show that the acquisition risk goes up, but the operational risk goes down, that's something we can get behind.
Navy Secretary John Phelan gave the keynote address on the last day of the conference. Here's how he summed up the Pentagon's appetite for risk.
The weight of calculated action outweighs the comfort of caution. It is better to bear the burden of bold attempts and carry the regret of what could have been.
The Pentagon plans to spend more than $145 billion on research and development this year. Andrew Dyer, KPBS News.
I'm Jeff Bennett. Tonight on the NewsHour, the Trump administration says it plans to draw down immigration operations in Minnesota. That's at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
San Diego County is making data on homeless services more accessible to the public. KPBS Penner Fellow Emmy Burris explains how a new online dashboard can show what progress is being made to solve homelessness.
The county's Office of Homeless Solutions tracks a variety of programs. They include helping older adults and youth facing housing instability, providing emergency housing for people in the unincorporated areas of the county, and aid for those living in encampments. This data was always available by request, but now it's more easily accessible online. Each program has a section in the dashboard with information such as demographic data, number of people served, and how many exit into stable housing. Deanna Beck is the director of the Office of Homeless Solutions.
We wanted to be more transparent so the public can see our progress, see all the good programs that we're administering and all the folks that we are serving region-wide.
The dashboard highlights different data for each program depending on what's most relevant. So the youth program includes what percentage of participants are still in school, and the programs for people living in encampments show the number of people who received emergency housing. But Beck says the programs all share an overarching objective that the dashboard is meant to track.
Ultimately, that's our main goal, is to either stabilize people in their current housing or connect them to more stable housing options. And so that a lot of our programs show those kind of outcomes.
The Office of Homeless Solutions is planning to update the dashboard monthly. Emmy Burris, KPBS News.
Public Matters is a partnership between KPBS, iNewsSource, and Voice of San Diego. You can see more of our stories at kpbs.org/Public Matters. Valentine's Day is around the corner, and while many couples will be celebrating love, romance scammers use this holiday to target victims. The FBI says these type of scams surge around January and February because they know people are looking for relationships. Jen Sullivan reports on the red flags to watch out for.
Valentine's Day is all about celebrating love, but for some, the holiday becomes an opportunity for something much darker, romance scams. It's a special type of con that leaves victims with a broken heart and a drained bank account.
You create this trusting bond with this person, and once that they know that you trust them, they're going to start asking you for money.
Amy Knopfsinger with AARP works directly with people who have been victim to these types of scams. AARP says adults aged 50 to 64 are especially at risk of being targeted, and the FBI says it's because seniors tend to be more trusting and polite.
The loss of the hopes and the dreams that this criminal crafted for them is even more devastating.
These types of cons have skyrocketed in recent years. In 2020, financial losses from reported romance scams were $600 million. But in 2024, those losses jumped to $2.4 billion, according to the Federal Trade Commission. Knopfsinger says she worries those numbers are likely even higher because so many people don't report that they've been a victim.
They feel shame that they had this person, be so emotionally tied to them. They want to keep the victims silent.
Here's how to spot the red flags. The FBI says to be cautious if a person you're talking to on a dating app or social media site wants to quickly leave the dating app to communicate directly, or if the person makes excuses to not meet in person. And never send money to someone you have only communicated with online or by phone. If you do think you or a loved one has been a victim, you're urged to report it to the Internet Crime Complaint Center. For Consumer Watch, I'm Jen Sullivan.
A bit of San Diego history now, just in time for Valentine's Day. There used to be a place where, according to legend, romance would blossom. You just had to know where to go and what to do. Ken Kramer takes us back for this story about San Diego.
It's a very strange thing. Here are these stairs that don't seem to go anyplace. But Balboa Park Ranger Kim Duclos says there used to be something.
And you walk down here, and unfortunately, the timbers are all gone from the bridge, which was sometimes referred to as Honeymoon Bridge.
That's right. There used to be a bridge here, right across Palm Canyon back in like 1935. It was something you just had to do, walk across it, look at the palm trees. But honeymoon? Well, there were stories about this bridge, stories that if you and your sweetheart went across it together, your life would be good.
I guess either walk out hand in hand, or I like to imagine you came from opposite landings, opposite sides of the bridge, walked out to the center, sort of turned, kissed and embraced, and then assured yourself a long and happy marriage from that point on. And I think the idea was you needed to get out there within the first year of your marriage to make sure that it held firm.
Couples, lovers, I mean, there must have been marriage proposals and everything. Though it is a funny thing, all the pictures from back then seem not very, well, romantic. But they say it really was a sweet place. Even the lighted bells were sprinkled with glass marbles that made everything glow as you walked along.
Walk over the treetops, walk right across the canopy. Well, all of that is gone now.
The wooden beams aged and weakened, and Honeymoon Bridge was taken down decades ago.
And it's unfortunate. I think it would be so lovely to have that here again. I mean, imagine walking across there now and having it kind of go through this beautiful canopy of trees. I think it's something that might be worth seeing, who knows, in the future sometime.
In the meantime, on the north side of Palm Canyon in Balboa Park, if you know where to look, just off the Alcazar Garden parking lot, there are the stairs that in the days of the Great Depression led to marital happiness, at least according to the story about San Diego.
You always learn stuff when you watch Ken. You can catch more of Ken Kramer's stories about San Diego every Thursday night at 8 when his half-hour show airs right here on KPBS. Last year, the winner of America's Got Talent was Chula Vista-born Jessica Sanchez. Almost 20 years ago, she was on the very first season of the show as an 11-year-old. KPBS South Bay reporter Corey Suzuki spoke with Jessica for our Arts and Culture podcast, The Finest. He joins me now in the newsroom to talk more about her comeback story and what it says about the San Diego region. Corey, for those of us who don't remember, who is Jessica Sanchez?
John, Jessica is a singer and songwriter from the South Bay. Like you said, most people have really known her for 2 performances. The first, when she was on the very first season of America's Got Talent in 2006, and the second, when she performed on American Idol in 2012 and made it all the way to the finals. That was really her breakout moment. After that, she moved to Los Angeles with a record deal and released her first album. But I think a lot of people still really think about those 2 performances when they hear her name.
Yeah, for sure. So can you talk more about her connection to San Diego, Chula Vista, everything down here?
Well, Jessica really grew up here, both as an artist and a person. She's the daughter of Filipino and Mexican-American parents, and she has roots in Chula Vista and National City, too. As a little kid, she grew up performing all across San Diego County. She says some of her earliest performances were at places like East Lake Middle School and Seafood City, the Filipino supermarket.
I was literally like winning every single time, and I was like, oh my gosh, they love me here. But yeah, I definitely made my rounds around San Diego.
Okay, so after American Idol, she moved to Los Angeles to launch her music career, but Jessica says things took a turn from there, right?
Yeah, that's right. Jessica says the music industry was a little overwhelming in Los Angeles. A lot of people around her had their own ideas about what she should look like and what she should sing.
I remember guys that were like managers or like producers and stuff like that would tell me like, oh, like, you know, we could see you being like this, like, you know, this sexy Asian girl, you know, and I'm just like, this is really weird that you're like trying to put me in this like box.
Jessica says it felt like the industry was trying to make her into someone else, even though she was still just a kid trying to figure out who she was. Jessica was in LA for a bit, but eventually she decided to take a step back. 5 years after that American Idol performance, she came back home for a show in National City. Back in San Diego, she was able to slow down. She met her now husband, found a deeper relationship with Christianity, and continued to reflect on her purpose as an artist. The years went by, Jessica and her husband moved to Houston, and she started thinking about whether it might be time to move on from music altogether. That's when she heard the news that America's Got Talent was back for its 20th season.
Okay, so at this point, she'd kind of drawn back from the industry for almost a decade, right? That's kind of unusual. What was she thinking?
Well, it was really a lot of mixed emotions and questions hearing that announcement. Around the same time, Jessica had also learned that she was pregnant. But ultimately, she says the timing just felt right to audition for the show.
I kind of feel like there was this sense of peace of like, okay, I feel like it's been so many years and I feel at peace about kind of putting myself back out there. I wasn't really thinking about like what people would think of me coming back on a show, or I wasn't thinking of like me failing. I was just like, you know what, like I feel like I'm ready to just go out there and try again.
And Jessica really reemerged as a force. She blew through the auditions, moved on through quarterfinals and semifinals, and in September, she was declared the winner of the 20th season.
It's so cool. I love that. So, okay, you've been on this, I know, for quite a while. What does Jessica's story say about San Diego?
Well, I spoke with Jessica and some cultural arts experts, and Jessica really credits San Diego with giving her the confidence to come back. Even away in LA or Houston, she says she still carries that sense of support and multicultural pride. And one day, she says, she'll come back here for good.
I know she'll be welcomed with open arms. Corey, thank you so much. Thank you for this story.
Thanks so much, John.
To hear more of Jessica's story, you can listen to the full episode of The Finest podcast. You can find it at kpbs.org/The Finest or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
As we look ahead, the next week is going to be very active here for us. Most of us have a bit of a break in the action, though, into the beginning of the weekend. Friday's moisture barely off to the east. A few of the mountainous areas may be clipped by a little bit of activity, maybe a couple of wet snowflakes or a raindrop or two way up in the high ground or off to the east. But most of us stay dry. Very wet then next week. Snow levels will be dropping to around 5,000 feet in far southern California early in the week. But most of us just prepare for rain starting on Monday. Tonight, partly cloudy, 56 degrees for your low. And you can see the bulk of this storm system is barely to the east, kind of swinging around the south side of California, moving into the Four Corners region. Most of us will be dry. We'll be keeping an eye out for maybe a stray shower or two farther to the east. You can see that we include that into Borrego Springs, Mount Laguna, maybe even closer to Escondido, but the bulk of the time on Friday should be dry for the coastline, 67 in Chula Vista and in San Diego. Strong start to the weekend here. This is going to be one of the nicest days in the next week and a half for us on Saturday, so get out there and enjoy it. Pleasant, dry weather. Rain approaches on Sunday. It's not quite here yet on Sunday, but it's getting closer. Northern and central California certainly get into it, and we'll be watching future radar and satellite. Here it comes. We'll press pause on Sunday. Around 3 p.m. Rain, San Francisco north down into areas a little closer to Pismo Beach. Showers will begin to sling in, and then we'll see that on Monday. And Monday night, more rain for us. Tuesday, off and on showers will be around, a little more numerous to the north. Another surge of this slides in early Wednesday for us. So it comes in waves, multiple storms Sunday into next Wednesday. Feet of snow in the Sierra. Dangerous travel through the passes to our north, but this is going to be beneficial for water supply. After a dry spell to start the year, we're getting back into it. Coastal forecast here, we miss out on the action on Friday, bright for the coast, but then Sunday clouds thicken. Here comes the rain, occasionally heavy Monday and into Tuesday. Temperatures down a bit. Inland areas still, for the most part, were dry and bright for Friday, at least just inland. Better chance for showers farther east this Friday. Saturday, a nice day. Sunday, clouds thicken. Rain rolls in Monday and Tuesday. Let's go into the mountains here. And here you may see a brief shower on Friday. Most of the action farther east. We're going to get into rain and snow Monday and Tuesday. Snow levels falling to around 5,000 feet in elevation. And in the deserts, we could be clipped by a shower in the eastern part of the region here on the desert floor. A few showers may move through on Friday. The bulk of the moisture farther east into Arizona. But we get cool and the rain is rolling into the deserts Monday and Tuesday. I'm AccuWeather meteorologist Jeff Cornish for KPBS News.
Student artists from San Ysidro High School are showcasing their upbringing and future plans in a new exhibition. KPBS education reporter Katie Anastas says it's on display at the Japanese Friendship Garden in Balboa Park.
12th grader Estefania Padilla grew up in Tijuana. She remembers walking through town with her grandfather, visiting their favorite stores. She's recreated that scene in a colored pencil drawing, now on display at the Japanese Friendship Garden.
I have subtle nods to like Mexican Tijuana's culture. Like we have like the Virgen de Guadalupe right here in the backdrop. We have the papeleria, which I would always visit for my art projects. We have papel picado, which would always be put up like for festivals, anything like that. It's such a beautiful decoration.
At the center is Padilla, riding a giant guinea pig. That's a reference to a childhood pet that inspired her to pursue a career in veterinary medicine. Padilla is one of the artists featured in the exhibit. It's called Roots and Blossoms. The pieces showcase students' heritage and dreams for the future. For 11th grader Amy Vargas, it was an opportunity to try out new techniques. She usually paints small landscapes. Her piece shows cherry blossoms coming out of her heart. Her mom helped her make the papier-mâché flowers.
She told me all about how, when she was little, she used to make these little flowers with her friends at school. And it was nice to connect with her in that moment.
Next to each piece is an artist statement. That's something many art students don't write until college, says art teacher Daniel Solomon.
You get a chance to share with people, this is why I chose this flower. This is why I chose this color.
It's also the students' first time showing their art outside of the classroom.
I'm really, really proud of all of the entities that came together to provide these students an opportunity to display their artwork publicly so they know that they deserve to be, praised.
For Padilla, showing her artwork at the garden is nerve-wracking but exciting. She says people visiting the exhibit should remember,
whenever an artist makes a piece, that's a little piece of them.
The exhibit runs through Thursday, February 19th. Katie Anastas, KPBS News.
You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone. I'm John Carroll. Have a great evening.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, air, restoration, and flood services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit BillHowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. By viewers like you. Thank you.